Thousands rally at the State House asking to be taxed more. Will they get their way? We'll talk about it next on Capitol View. Welcome to Capitol View, the program where we talk about state government, sometimes the federal government, and how it just might affect your life. I'm Bernie Schoenburg from the State Journal-Register. A lot going on around state government this week, and a little federal stuff too, which our first guest in particular will know something about. Bob Gough is here to help talk about it. He is the editor of QuincyNews.org. And before the show is over, we'll talk about what appears to be a presidential visit to your town. Welcome, welcome, Bob.
Thanks, Bernie.
Melissa Hahn is here, State House Bureau Chief for Illinois Radio Network, serving dozens of stations across the state. Melissa, welcome back.
Thank you.
And Benjamin Yount of Illinois State House News, known for his radio voice, but he writes now too. Ben, welcome back.
Thank you.
We had, okay, was it 15,000 people or not who rallied at the State House this week? Those who saw, because this was the Fair Budget Coalition, they called it, which is a conglomeration of social service groups and labor unions, mostly that work for the state, but also who do state-funded things, social service agencies. Everybody says, they turned to the State House and they chanted, you know, raise our taxes. Was it 15,000 and will it happen?
If it was 15,000 people, I'm 150 pounds. And I think we both know where that sits. It it was a very big crowd.
Well, you've been there at one point, I'm sure.
I can remember 150
Anyway.
pounds. It was a big crowd. I mean, you know, a couple of thousand people, 5, 6.
Maybe 10.
Maybe 10. It was, from where we were, you know, it was oddly shaped because as opposed to doing it on the Capitol lawn where you could see people, they did it sort of down Capitol Street, and it was a T-shaped crowd there, and it was strange. But it was very, very well organized. You could tell the different unions had really put some thought into this. The march around the Capitol, everybody stayed in their groups. They chanted well. They had their pre-printed talking points.
And the Springfield High School Band was leading the way around the Capitol.
Did a very good job. Will it work? No, absolutely not. It was very, very good for the bar that is down below our office, but as far as affecting any sort of other change, no.
What building are you in?
We're in the Vinegar Hill Mall.
Okay.
Dublin Pub.
Well, you know, I bring, the numbers are interesting just because I think that the organizers of this really wanted to show support when they said 15,000 were expected. They did say, the AFSCME folks in particular, that they had 250 to 300 buses and they would fit 50 people on a bus. You multiply, you know, so if all of that was right and all the buses were full, then they might have gotten it. And the Secretary of State Police did confirm, at least their estimate, that there were 12,000 people around the Capitol and 3,000 others around. But again, we are skeptical because that's our jobs.
That's right.
But Melissa.
I always ballpark low, apparently, but I would have said 6,000.
Okay.
And it was, you know, you give them credit because, as Ben said, they were a very well organized and very well behaved crowds. We've all been through those rallies where, you know, you practically get knocked into a wall and it's just absolute chaos, and they really did a good job, I thought, and had good music before the rally. They had bottled water everywhere, so they were taking care of their folks.
Pallets full of
it was a
cases
nice job.
of
I
water.
wish whoever organized that, I wish they'd organize everyone
The
else.
other thing I noticed is that when they did the speeches, because things like this tend to be a lot of the same over and over again, you know, you're hurting people, you have to do your job, you have to raise our taxes, or else it's not responsible. They had like 5 or 6 speakers, but it only took about a half hour, and then they let the march happen, and then they let people go in the and do the rotunda rally.
Savvy. We did a lot of our
so they didn't do
interviews.
like 3 hours of speeches, which
Thank
easily could have happened.
heavens,
No,
yes.
no. The people that we talked to before the speeches, and that I think was part of the purpose, bring these people down and you can hear their stories from across the state. And even those folks were pretty prepared. You could pick out the talking points in the general theme. So they do get good marks for their organization.
Bob, were you in Quincy or in town?
I was in Quincy, but I was able to see off the group of teachers who were leaving the parking lot from Quincy, and I chatted to some of them as they got on the bus, and they had the placards and all their blue T-shirts and everything. So as they took off, a lot of talk on my website as I posted that story. Many people were wondering that these teachers were actually taking a day. You know, they were taking a day off, which they're paid for by the taxpayer to go do this.
Well,
so people were.
But don't do the union, yeah, go ahead.
But then the people were saying, look, it's their own day off. If they take their own day off, they can do with it as
Right.
they want.
And some of them, I think, were reimbursed by unions, too.
Yes.
Some union people, at least in some of the groups, said that they get like union pay to do this as union
So there was a
organizing
very good,
stuff.
there is a very good balanced debate on our website about the whole, the ramifications of this, of people going to protest and raising their own taxes and such. So.
As far as lawmakers, Democrats and Republicans alike, the general feeling, I think, has been from the State House Press Corps and talking to legislators who are there, that with a May 7th being the scheduled end of the spring session, with an election coming up in November, that the tax increase that was being advocated yesterday, either the small one, the 1% that Governor Quinn has talked about, the education surcharge, 1 percentage point higher in
I love
income
that,
tax,
the education
or
surcharge.
the significantly higher, I guess it's from 3% individual tax to 5%, that was passed by the Senate last year, but did not pass the House and still languishes within the legislature, which is really what a lot of these people had on their T-shirts, House Bill 174. Any chance any of this will pass before they go home for the summer and campaign?
I think it's the same chance that there were 15,000 people downtown. No, I don't
Okay.
think so.
Okay.
I mean, I think the popular theory is that they will do what they need to do to keep government operating and come back in November after the election, and then we'll have a discussion of whether it's going to be this, the surcharge or the actual.
Yeah, and
income
I
tax
think
increase.
that really gets to the motive of the organizers of this rally. I do not think that any of the unions were so naive to think that even if you did put 15,000 people or 6,000 or however many they did on the lawn, that was going to force a vote. Was this more to make the union members feel good? Was this to get on TV? Was there really an expectation of change? Because if there really was, if these people who got on the bus in Quincy really believed that they would come home with a tax increase vote in their back pocket, they're going to be sadly disappointed because that's not going to happen.
But there have been a number of follow-up events, and I know one group is meeting with legislators in Springfield over the weekend, and there's a guy named Frank Anselmo who was Community Behavioral Healthcare Association of Illinois.
Yes.
The press conference room full of people doing a little clapping, odd for a press conference. However, enthusiasm, he's talking about 72,000 people will lose mental health services under the current Quinn proposed budget. I mean, and then you talk, to some of the families, the mothers who said, my child, who were at the event, the big event, my child will lose their health care. That means I might not be able to get to my job, which means, I'm going to maybe go on public aid as opposed to continue working. There are so many things that are really there, so I guess those real things appear to be happening, and yet we also have Republican lawmakers in particular saying we can't raise taxes, that would be bad for the economy, we have to create jobs and make this a better state for business. So where do we find common ground? Where does the state go? What is the status of the budget, experts?
Well, right now, the Democrats are in power, and if they could get their acts together, we'd probably already have a tax increase. I think this is proof that they can't quite get their act together. And as we've seen for years, when you have Democrats in charge of everything or Republicans in charge of everything, the factions start coming out, and then you can't get anything done. Somebody's going to have to blink here, and whether it's on the House side, because House Minority Leader Tom Cross finally realizes that they're just getting beat up everywhere they go for just saying no, 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 as the Democrats keep saying, the party of no, or if Christine Radonio, the Senate Minority Leader, who does tend to be the negotiator in some cases over there in the Senate, if she finally says, you know what, we need to do what's right and get out of here, somebody's going to have to blink to get it done. But if we wait until November, I think it's possible the Democrats will do whatever they want.
And this is the problem, is that you cannot give lawmakers an easy out. And the easy out is, well, let's see who's governor come November, because then if Bill Brady wins, Democrats can throw up their hands and say, you wanted to be governor, now here you go. And that also may move in some of the big strategery that I know we've talked about on this show before and that is talked about at the State House a lot. If you have a Republican governor, Republican lawmakers have to move to support that governor. So you get rid of this just staring contest that you have in the House, where Republicans are sitting on their hands and the Speaker is saying, I'm not going to move anything on my guys because I'm not going to send them back home with a Democrats raised your taxes mailer waiting in the mailbox. So anytime you have an easy out, that is what the legislature will always take, with very, very few exceptions.
I mean, we're already so far behind. The state is so far behind in paying its bills to everybody. It doesn't look like they're going to catch up anytime soon. So, you know, how much worse is it going to get come November? Is there going to be some sort of major shutdown that is going to force a hand? If not, then they are just going to pass the extension and move on.
And I mentioned that one other show too. I think here in the state of Illinois, where our lawmakers are purely reactionary and never prevent anything, when you start hearing stories that, and I hate this is going to sound tacky, but it's true, when kids start to die because of action. I have a good friend whose son lost a placement in a residential mental health facility because the place was not shutting down, but it was having to tighten up a little bit, and so they lost some people. She's having a terrible time getting him in somewhere else, and you know, when one of those kids winds up dead from maybe an addiction or whatever because he or she ran away and died, those are the kind of things that are going to make lawmakers move, because that's what happens. If something bad happens and the media focuses on it and says, lawmaker, why didn't you fix this, or why didn't you prevent it, then all of a sudden the votes might be there.
Well, but it's real interesting because, you know, the media, all of us are media, and yet, well, you know, I don't know, interestingly to call them out, the Chicago Tribune editorial page keeps saying you can do all this without raising taxes, which, of course, the Tribune recently raised its prices. But, you know, there is pressure. There's not that kind of pressure being built. They're not necessarily saying what Bill Brady's saying, but maybe saying what some other Republicans are saying. There's got to be all of these reforms and all of these cuts and lower the eligibility for Medicaid, which Blagojevich, you know, pumped up without legislative approval. We haven't pulled it back. We are still giving free bus rides to seniors, and
Right.
this week a Senate committee did not take that back, even though that costs like $30 million to transit agencies that need the money for other things. So, you know, is that pressure there? I don't know.
And I don't
just
think
throw
that
this out
pressure
there.
will be there
Yes,
until you
yeah.
have deaths.
Yeah, no,
You know,
that's-
back in was it the 90s when there was that big DCFS shortage, and they started linking all these cases of children who were killed. They started linking them to these extremely high caseloads, et cetera. Then, oh my, then we had to
you
save
only
the
have to
children.
go back to MGT push. Quinn in the early release,
which is
meritorious good time. It was that whole kerfuffle, and boom, there was action there, and no one died. You just had some people getting out a little bit earlier.
Yeah, this is when some violent offenders were let go early when Governor Quinn said that wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah, and it's really tough to draw these lines from, okay, the schools in Washington, Illinois are owed $30 million for whatever.
That would be high.
Yeah, it's. I've always said until high school football gets cut,
Yes.
people aren't going to believe.
It's Illinois basketball.
But you know, in Chicago, weren't
well,
they talking about cutting sophomore sports in all Chicago
Yeah,
schools?
but I mean,
public schools?
And I said before, if remember when state government, there was a lawsuit, and I think it was by AFSCME, but some of the unions sued and said that state government workers should at least be paid, what was it, the federal minimum wage? I can't remember, but it turned out that state workers were still going to get kind of paid. And I think, no, don't do that, because then there's no pressure. You know what? Come July 1, stop the paychecks. Come August 15th, the schools don't open, then the lawmakers are going to act.
Yeah, and they had a chance during the Blagojevich administration, and they went over, they worked the side deals, and that was the opportunity to shut the state down before we got into this, you know, game of kick the can.
It's cry wolf. They've said it too many times.
That-
We're going to shut down, blah, blah, blah. And then,
Yeah.
oh, look, we found a solution that'll get us
By
there.
the way, I'm tired of everybody saying kick the can down the road.
Oh,
because that is
if one more Republican says that in a
the
news
2010
conference.
statement of what we're doing with the budget problem. So perhaps we won't say that again, but if I say it again.
It is not.
Okay,
We're going to
so-
throw something at you. Yeah.
Governor Quinn also proposed, like apparently there was a new budget plan came out, including like a tax on downloads of music quickly called the, what is it, iTax for
iTax.
iTunes. And then a Young Republican Club somewhere, you know, the state party issued a statement. The Young Republicans are mad because this will attack them and their music, and they don't want to be taxed more either. Do we think we're getting that,
That
Bob?
would never happen.
No
There's
way.
No way.
No.
Apparently
No
several
way.
states are doing this, or a dozen or 14 or so.
And
won't
this is
happen here.
different than just taxing regular internet purchases, right? This would be
think
a
it's like a
per
sales tax.
download. Because I wondered when I first heard it, well, you know, they've been talking about taxing internet purchases anyway. Is this going to be just like that? And is somebody just making a big deal out of the fact that, oh, gee whiz, you know,
It would
iPhone down,
include, yeah.
that,
It would include
that we
iTunes.
could start talking iTunes and make a cool name out of it. But no, this was something like a 50-cent automatic cost for, you know,
50
certain
cents?
purchases,
That's
and
almost-
75 cents for something else.
Almost half
so
the cost of a song.
Right, I know, because I was thinking my kids love to download music.
Yeah.
How much is this going to cost me
The,
now?
the younger reporters in our office immediately said, well, you know, we'll go back to stealing it. So the state, I don't think, would have collected as much.
But if it's all on a credit card, does anybody really notice? Oh, I'm sorry, that's a terrible thing to say. I guess
Oh, my.
I could be a legislator too.
You
Oh,
could.
I'd vote for you, Bernie.
Thanks, no. There is kind of an ongoing touchy story that fits into the budget situation. This is the 26-year-old son of Senate President Cullerton, and the son was charged with DUI in Chicago within the last couple weeks, and apparently was driving a car licensed to the state Senate, which revealed the situation that there are something like 14 cars that legislators have as part of perks of being in the General Assembly. Senator Matt Murphy, who perhaps best known for being the second place finisher for lieutenant governor because Andy McKenna's ads could only do so much. But Matt Murphy said at a news conference that some of us were at that he's going to file legislation to end having legislators have state cars. Situation with that, it is interesting, as you said. It's not a, I mean, it's obviously a difficult family situation for the Cullertons, and you know, he was remorseful and said he didn't give permission for the son to use the car. But it is a situation where, if not for this, I don't think any of us knew that there were 14, you know, cars that the legislature
I think there were
had.
some of us that knew that there were pool cars, because so many agencies at least used to, and I don't know what the situation is now, but there's a pool of cars that workers, and you can fill in the blank on which worker, could use to travel to the next town or whatever, or drive stuff around. But I don't think anybody knew that they were specifically assigned vehicles. And then the news that Cullerton's son this wasn't the first incident. There were high-speed citations. There were two other DUIs. So this has become a much bigger story.
Or at least stops for.
Or at least
without
stops for,
it.
yes.
Yeah,
Because
I don't think he was
charges
charged.
for DUI.
Yeah.
And that brings a whole other issue. How did those never get through the system? But, you know, let's set aside the issue of clearly there's a problem there that needs to be dealt with. But let's just look at it from a fiscal point of view. 14 cars, you know, we're cutting people
Well, we do have
right and left,
177
and-
legislators.
Well, but you know, these folks are making what? Baseline 72. 10 grand more if you chair a committee. It just, you know, sky's the limit.
And many have
practically for this.
outside jobs.
Exactly. So this is a part-time gig for them. Drive your own car. And then another question came
Spoken
up.
as a true radio person.
Sorry. Just kind of put it on the line there. The other question is, as I understand it, Cullerton flies usually from Chicago
Yeah, I think
to
he uses the
Springfield,
car
so he's
mostly
not
in
even
Chicago.
using. Yeah, and well, you know, do we want to pay to have that car? Because you're paying not only for the car, well, the state government, our taxpayers paid for the car, but the insurance, et cetera. Do we really need to be paying for that at a time when we're in that much trouble? Everybody should take a hit.
And I'm sorry, but if he took a car without authorization, that's stealing. Grand theft auto. Let's look at those kinds of charges, because I took the car
Now-
without authorization. Guess what? You stole it.
Well, you know, you're talking about a family situation.
It wasn't
I don't
a family
think
car. It was your car. It was your car. It was your car.
I wouldn't dream of borrowing somebody's company car. You know, a parent, a friend. I mean, that's the company car.
I'm gonna
You
take Dad's
don't
company
do
car.
that.
Yeah, no.
It's
Understood.
14 cars. How old are they? How long have they had them? I mean, it's.
Well, you're talking some
we're-
nice,
there's
pretty
some newer
nice
ones,
SUVs.
yeah.
We're billions of dollars behind. You know, get rid of 14 cars.
Understood.
It's fine.
But I think
it's the
but I
perception
think
of
it's and I think it goes to show you just how many perks there are for these
Well,
folks
I mean,
that people don't know about.
The-
you know,
those-
you get per
Those cars
diems,
will get
you
swallowed
get
up by
cars,
CMS.
you get.
That's what happened to all of
And
the
you get to
agency
visit
cars.
Springfield. Okay. Now,
What else could you want?
I'd like to talk a bit about pensions because there continues to be discussion of, clearly the legislature acted quickly a couple weeks ago. In one day, a fell swoop, future employees are going to have lesser pension benefits. They're not going to be able to access pensions until like 62 or 67 full benefits. Those full benefits will be limited. Current employees, Governor Quinn has said, and has a lawyer and a firm saying, you can't touch current pensions in any way because that's unconstitutional. Chris Lawson, one of the Republican senators, said at this news conference that, well, we think you can. We think you can up the age to 62 or 67 instead of 55 right now to access your pension. You could also limit the total amount of pension to, I think he said 4 times what Social Security maximum is. And that some lawyers say that. I think one of the firms that he mentioned in Chicago. So should state employees still be worried this will happen, or with the Democratic administration, will they not touch these because of the constitutional question?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's ever going to happen. And even if a lawyer says you can, you need to have, would it be 70 in the House and 35? I mean, you need lawmakers. You need everybody to say, yes, you can. And that's never going to happen. I do not think you're going to see many more changes, at least this year, for pensions. They've done their one pension bill. It makes some changes, although the governor's savings price tag continues to grow from 100 billion to 200 billion, and from 300 million
over many years.
Yeah,
in actuarial figures and all of that.
That's enough to get reform. You know, look, we've done something, and now they can
Makes
move
a nice
on.
article in the campaign literature.
It is. You check it off the box, and editorial boards can point and say, look.
Okay, speaking of which, just a little politics, as you mentioned, Bill Brady continues the Republican candidate for governor, and of course we have Rich Whitney, the Green Party candidate, but Brady continues to lead Quinn in most polls that we see. Is this something that is going to be maintained, Bob?
I think he's going to do that for quite some time. I just think the whole anti-incumbency issue, it's just not going to be a great fall for Democrats. I think Brady's got a heck of a shot.
And I think one thing in his favor, and it drives us crazy because he is not really that accessible. His news conferences, aside from the MGT push news conference, it was kind of a debacle. He's kept his news conferences pretty tight and to the subject. That drives us crazy, but what it does for the voter is it doesn't give him too much time to say something wrong or offensive to that particular voter. And I think a lot of what happened and I think we all agree, in the primary election was that nobody picked at him a whole lot, and so a lot of people thought, oh, okay, I'll vote for this guy. I haven't heard that much bad about him. And this might be the same case. Governor Quinn keeps doing these things and getting slammed and rightfully so, for flip-flopping, for this or that. Pushing to raise your income taxes.
Canoes are.
And canoes are. And then, maybe Bill Brady will simply benefit from the fact that he's not the one that's being picked at.
Of course, Bill Brady has flipped in the last week to say, after he said he would not release his income tax returns, he now says he is releasing his income tax returns.
Right.
I think the key for the spring is good for Brady because Pat Quinn has to take his lumps.
Right.
And
Democrats are infighting.
Yeah, and how many
Bill
of those
Brady
lumps
doesn't
he
have to be in
takes?
there.
Brady he's not the star of the show. That script will flip when you get to the summer, and I think that the key will be which Pat Quinn shows up for the campaign. Will it be the Pat Quinn that pulled it out against Dan Hines and really scrapped and really fought and really campaigned pretty well, much better than a lot of people expected, or will it be the governor who says one day $83,000 canoes are, and next day no?
For one of my friends.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, it was a job that somebody got, but then when it made the news, the governor said, hey, I just found out he's not getting the job. Okay. I still think Bill Brady's social views will play big in this race and will be highlighted by the Quinn campaign and will not play well in Chicago. So I don't think there's a runaway here.
Well, absolutely.
I would like to get to Bob and talk about it. We're pretty sure that President Obama is coming to Quincy. Yep. What's the situation in Quincy? Why there? And what's the setup? Are people excited about this?
I think so. The ones you talk to who are either independent or Democrats are pretty excited about it. The Republicans or the Tea Partiers are not. So I look at this as a great opportunity for Quincy to try to highlight itself. The one big thing that Quincy's working on right now is hydroelectric power, building power plants on the Mississippi. The city is heavily involved in doing that. This appears to be part of the president's Main
green.
Street to the White House Main Street initiative. He's going to head over to Missouri, about 90 miles away from Quincy. I think he's touring an ethanol plant there. So he'll be at an ethanol plant, and he'll be at the river, and then he's going to make the swing through southeast Iowa, spend the night in Des Moines, and I don't know what he's doing up there. I imagine sounds like a fundraiser to me. But yeah, I think that's what we're looking at here. It's looking at the green initiative and jobs for the 21st century, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Great time to visit the heartland.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll use that word a few times.
Yes, and
Quincy is not flooded right now, so this is a great
that's
time
right.
to visit.
And the Mississippi,
Yes.
it is the Mississippi. There makes a nice backdrop for
It does. I think that,
TV cameras.
and they haven't set up the official where the public event's going to be next Wednesday, but I'd imagine it's going to be somewhere by the river, I would guess.
Okay. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't, thank you for your thoughts on that, Bob, if I didn't mention Rod Blagojevich, because, for 6 years we talked of
What
nothing
is a
else.
political analysis show without
But
Blagojevich?
Rod Blagojevich had a press conference, which I don't know why they call it that when it's a speech and he doesn't answer questions. So he gave a statement in Chicago in front of a bunch of cameras, and he basically said that Patrick Fitzgerald, the U.S. Attorney in Chicago, needs to be manly enough to come to court and meet Rod Blagojevich head on.
Well,
What do we think of this?
That was after he called him a coward and
And
a
a
liar
liar.
and said, "Don't ever say anything about my wife."
Is this the way to
again."
handle your prosecutor as
Oh,
trial
I
is
love
coming
Rod
up?
Blagojevich. I love him. I don't. If he goes,
Are you doing this for the
No,
purpose of public policy?
When he goes to prison, it's going to be a sad day because we're going to miss all of that entertainment.
Because they won't let him do press conferences in prison, I don't think.
The man is a grease fire. You just can't turn away.
grease fire.
It is out of control and billowing, and it just
It is like a train wreck. You really don't want to look, but you have to look.
But this is classic Blagojevich. Anybody who covered him knows that this is who he is, and that's his personality.
But doesn't this hurt him at trial? Doesn't this make
Sure it
the
does.
prosecutors work harder?
Well, sure it does. But I mean, he's got to be at that stage where I am in it so deep already. What's it going to matter? Like, they're going to like me anymore? That's
See-
got to be what
See,
it
now,
is.
and I'm kind
I
of
don't
on the other
disagree.
side.
I don't
Oh.
think he knows.
No, I think he truly believes that he did what was right for the people. I think there is a delusion
If you
there.
say it enough to yourself and look in the mirror,
Yes.
and we think he looks in the mirror from time to time, that would be
Often.
it. And that was, I really shouldn't speak meanly of people like that. On that note, however, I would like to thank Bob Gough, Melissa Hahn, Benjamin Yount. I'm Bernie Schoenburg, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Capitol View.